Hey everyone, Ben from JangaFX here. So today we're going to be looking at creating a cloudscape in EmberGen. And when you think of EmberGen, you think of, explosion, magic effects, fire. You don't typically think of clouds, but because it's something that moves through the air, reacts to forces around it, EmberGen can handle this really, really well. So our starting point today is we've got a domain that is quite short, quite wide, quite long, and everything's going to take place on this sort of plane here. Now our emitter here isn't the one that we're going to be using. To start off with, let's change our primitive shape. I want to actually fill this whole domain with a shape. And I'll explain why in a minute. So let's get a box. Let's make it one tool and crank it all the way out to the edges. Let's see how that looks. That looks about right. Now the problem here is we're emitting particles all over the place and we don't really want to be doing that. So let's just straighten this up. Let's bring in a collider. And I'm going to bring in some noise. I'm going to bring the scale of this up to say, let's try 100. Okay, and you can see how it's created a collider that's going to stop these particles from doing anything. They're automatically killed and discounted. If we hide our collider, you'll be able to see. So I'm going to use this to basically become like a randomly shaped cookie cutter to sort of stamp out areas of our domain that are going to have clouds birthing in them. Now firstly, they're a little bit lumpy and clumpy. I kind of want something with a bit more detail, so I'm going to bring up the octaves here. You won't see that reflected immediately while you're doing it, but if we restart, see we've got a bit more detail in there, and that's cool. I like that. I'm going to add a little bit of animation speed so that over time the boundaries of this noise slowly move. All right, it's not super important, but it just sort of helps. I'm also going to add another noise. If we check the sizing of these, so this one's 100, let's put this one above and call it, say, 50, something like that. And we're going to add this in to the collider as well. So it's going to use both of these noise shapes. It's going to combine all of those blacks and whites, and it's going to use that to decide where these particles are allowed to start birthing smoke. And before we go any further, let's turn this from smoke into something more resembling a cloud. So anything that appears to be grey, we're going to bring it up to a white. Go into our smoke tab here, we've got this here. Let's bring this up to something that's quite light. And we'll do like the proper shading afterwards, but this is just to help us sort of envisage what it is we're making. Okay, so it's a start. It looks kind of cloudy, but this isn't in any way moving in the way that you would expect clouds to move. So let's play around with that first. Instead of constantly birthing particles, I want this to just do a burst right at the beginning of the animation. So let's go over to our emitter here, go over to emission, disable continuous, and just turn on burst emission. What we should find is it just births a load of particles all at once, and then it doesn't try to make any more. Which is good. That's good. Now there's a few things about the particles being born that I want to change. Let's check out the life to begin with. Now they're very, very short-lived here, so I want to change this up to, let's say, 5 seconds maximum. That would probably change how this looks because they would stick around for longer. So let's just check that out. There we go. So we're getting a lot more smoke coming off of these particles. Now the next thing I'd quite like to do is look at the active forces on our particle emitter. So let's say we're going to change our volume here to 175 minimum. I'm going to bring up velocity damping as well. Also forces tightness. And just see how that looks for a sec. Not a great deal different, but that will help. Now the thing that's giving all of this motion right now is this noise here. And that's actually cranked up pretty high. So let's have a quick look at that. Let's bring this down to say 0.2. Should reduce the amount of motion that we've got, especially if we check out our injection qualities over here. So let's bring down temperature. Don't want hot clouds, don't want flames. And we don't even want velocity. So let's see how that looks. There we go, bit more serene. So next what we're going to look at is this collider again. It's great that it's being used as like a cookie cutter to stamp out these areas where clouds can appear and can't appear, but it's a solid boundary right there. There's noise trying to move these clouds, but they can't go any further. They're being blocked by this collider. If we turn it off here, then we'll notice that things can move around and evolve. So we're going to animate our collider and animate the activity of the collider. So we're going to enable keyframes for this, and that doesn't make a keyframe, that just enables keyframes. So we're going to turn off, turn on again. And that says that our collider is active at frame 0. Let's come up to something fairly far along, maybe 240. Let's try that, and then we'll turn off the collider. So after a while, that smoke can start to escape those boundaries. That's pretty cool. I want these clouds to kind of go downwards a bit. I don't want them to float all the way up to the top. So let's go simulation over to force, and we'll make sure that our smoke weight is like fairly high, 250% of gravity. So it should, start to fall. That's pretty good. So another way that we can control the shape of what's being produced here is to use the mask shape on the particle emitter. So we're actually going to use the same noise that we've got here. So you see how we've got these black and white values here. In terms of the collider, where it's white, that's dictating that it's something that will stop the particles from appearing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same shape, plug it in over here, same with the other one. And then under our emission condition, instead of always, we're not going to use inside of masking shape. That would birth particles inside of the white parts of that noise map, which would kind of conflict with our collider. They would be birthed, it would start to make smoke, the collider would immediately extinguish it. So we're going to use outside the masking shape. Now, apart from a few random particles that are going to get kicked up in the air, we're now inside of our primitive shape and inside of our noise, which you can't really see in the viewport. So that's cool, there's lots to work with there. We've got a rough kind of flat cloud shape. Now we're going to use some forces. We're going to make those forces kind of work against each other, and we're going to sort of break these clouds up a little. There's a couple of things that I want to do first over in the simulation node. So if we head over to our dissipation tab here, our smoke dissipation, I want to bring that down fairly low. Let's say 5, because we want the smoke, aka the clouds, to not just disappear in front of our eyes. It's got to linger for quite a long time. And I'm also going to bring up the velocity dissipation as well, up to about 50. It doesn't need to be super, super high. Let's see how that affects things. That's cool. They're not just dying out now. All right. So now for a neat trick. We've got some forces to add, but there's what I call the shake and bake. We're going to use an oscillator and also like the global advection of the simulation. So let's go over to our simulation tab here, and we've got this advection offset here. And what that is you can think of that as like a linear wind in like any direction. So if we were to play this now, everything would get pushed. And you can push that in any old direction you want. So we're going to zero that out. And we're going to use a pin out here. We're going to put it into an oscillator. Oscillator, of course, being something that can pump a value in and out of this advection offset in like a cyclical fashion. Let's go with X. So we're going to use this here. I'm going to zero out this guy. And if we just start playing it, we'll see it's just getting pushed backwards and forwards. That's kind of what we want, because you can see already how it's breaking up these cloud shapes. And it's also giving us these thin and wispy sort of cirrus kind of textures as well. So we're going to use that. But we're going to mess around with it a little. We need it to be not quite so violent. And we can use that with this, either the amount or the attenuation. You can think of these as like a throttle. So let's dial down that frequency a little. Maybe 0.5. That should be a little bit slower. Maybe even more. Let's go 0.2. Okay, that's good. And then, like I said, you can think of these guys as, either one could be like a throttle for this. So if we bring this down to around 10, it's sort of greatly geared down what it's doing. And I'm going to use keyframes to actually take this from being quite high and violent and then over time bringing it down to 0. So let's do that. Let's enable keyframes. Let's whack it all the way up to 100. And we're just going to coincide with this keyframe here. We can think of the time in between these keyframes as our build period. Okay, and we're only interested in what these clouds look like after this. So this is like the shake and bake, like I said. So let's bring this down to 0 here. Let's make sure that these guys line up. So right click, align on right. I'm not concerned about exactly what frame this occurs on, just that they're all at the same time. All right, that's cool. We're going to do this a little bit more as well. We're going to, maybe we can introduce this to Y as well. So I'm going to use minus 15 there, 15 there, and we're going to drop the amount to say 30. So we're getting pushed and pulled around in all these different directions. And I just really like the sort of smeary shapes that it sort of builds into this. We're not quite at cloud yet, but we're getting close. I might make that last a bit longer. So I'm going to hold Control, scroll down. I'm going to make this build period last a bit longer. All right, this is starting to look like what I'm after. So I've got some sort of clumpy cloud showing up in here. We've got these thin, wispy sort of cirrus types. Now I'm sure that they wouldn't necessarily occur at the same altitude in real life, but I'm going for a look that I might use from sort of top down, or maybe even like an underneath view, something like this. So I'm not too concerned that they're happening in the same plane, and we're gonna develop this look a little bit further. So because we are using some noise here, we're going to enable, if we click on them and then shift click seed, some randomization. So I'm also going to shift click on scale and scale there. Let's name these because we're going to be using a fair few noises here. So let's call this Gen Noise 1 and this one Gen Noise 2. We want them to be different sizes and different seeds. So this is our sort of 50 and this is our 100. When we go into randomization, we want to input a range around these numbers. So give or take, I'd say 25. So head to randomized. Here's our Gen Noise 2. And this is the range here that we're going to be using. So let's say 75 and 125. And then for Gen Noise 1, let's use 25 and 75. And when we hit randomize, it's going to select a number in that range for each of these. So we will end up with different cloud shapes because a different size cutter is being used to dictate where they can sit in the scene. There we go. I might dial down our oscillator a bit here. So let's bring you down to say 50 and you down to 20. Just make it a bit less far reaching because we really just want to break up the edges of these guys a little. That's much more like it. Okay, so now we've got a lot of sort of bubbling happening here. That is the noise up here. So we're going to change some things in here. We've got animation speed that we don't necessarily need. Let's bring that right down. Let's bring up a load of octaves. And we're actually going to make a couple of these. So we're going to call this one our shaping noise. This is going to be the air currents that are going to push things around subtly, but you'll be able to see them. And I'm going to use a larger scale for this. I'm going to go for 150. And I'm going to dial down, what we got, 0.2. Yeah, we've got 0.2 on this one. So let's just see how this looks. So even after the build stage is stopped, our shaping noise should continue to push things around. Here we go, look. So that's pretty good. All right, starting to look pretty good. So it's got like a fluid quality almost. I like these fronts that are appearing. The cloud itself is kind of flopping down onto the floor and it's hitting a hard surface. The upshot of that is let's go to our shading and we're going to pump up the thickness of this. When we pop sort of below it, we've got these flat bottoms to the clouds, which is really useful because that could well be a look that you're after. If we play with the lighting here, you can see that we can start to build a look that, it kind of reflects what you'd expect a cloud to look like from this angle. We've still got a lot of stuff happening up the top, but we can address that in a mo. In fact, let's go to our volume processing and we use our slicing mask. So a roof width of let's say 20, but we'll bring that downwards and sort of cap our simulation. All right, this is cool. So don't forget, because we've got randomization on in this noise, when we go to our randomize tab, click it a few times, you see that you get a different value in here every time. So that means the generation of these clouds is going to be in a different place, a different amount. So rebuild, let it go through the build process, and then there you go. Now, thing is, our noise is constantly going to push this stuff around. If you've got, say, an animated scene where the clouds are going to move really fast, unrealistically so, then, by all means keep it at that. But we want this to almost stop. In fact, stopping it would probably be the best thing to do. So we're going to go to our time control on our simulation node here, time control tab. I'm going to use our free simulation property here, which can be keyframes. So turn on keyframes. It's not setting a keyframe here, it's just enabled at the moment. So we're going to turn it on and then turn off. That sets a keyframe that says the simulation is not frozen, i.e. the simulation will run. And let's take it through up to let's say frame 800. And then enable freezing. So simulation will just pause, deadlock right at that point. So consider this like the build process for placing the clouds. This next bit like a build process for pushing the clouds around a little bit and breaking them up with forces, which is the bit that we're going to focus on now. And then we get to frame 800 and everything just locks. Let's focus on putting a bit more detail in here. We're going to do that with some noise nodes. Okay, cool. We just brought up some big dark clouds so we can see the detail that we're going to be putting into this thing. So we've got our shaping noise here. We're going to want to make, let's say 2 or maybe 3, so that we've got some currents, but we've also got some sort of crispy, crunchy detail in these clouds as well. We're going to use noise at different scales to do this. So Control C, Control V. Let's call this noise 1. We're not going to connect that up yet. We're just going to go with scale 1. And we're going to plug this one in. And it will probably be way too high. I'd probably bring that down a little. So let's go into our masks. So think of these masks again as like a throttle. So you've got a smoke mask, a temperature mask, a velocity mask, and a constant mask. Constant mask is like the overall mask. So if we bring this up to say 10, run this again, we should still see that detail, but it should be brought down quite considerably. That's pretty neat. I like the amount of detail that's in there. There's maybe just a little bit too much going on in there, but I like the mix of smaller details and higher details. We're gonna bump the actual sim detail up in a minute. But I'm gonna mess around with some mask shapes for this noise here, because you can input a mask shape here to use a noise map to dictate where this noise is going to appear, regardless of how much turbulence there actually is on this. So let's try that out. Let's pop a noise shape here. Notice that's different to a noise force, and that's this thing here. So let's put this up fairly high, maybe 50 or so. Add some octaves in, and let's give it just a little bit of movement as well. And let's just see what that looks like. That's pretty cool. I like that because we're not seeing it absolutely everywhere. We're seeing it in various bits. And if you really, really want to play with these mask shapes and noise, you can use the bias of the noise to actually push it in a direction. So if we go into our noise force, and we look at the bias here under general, let's just whack this in the Y direction, which should take it off here. Nothing will happen right now because as of this point the simulation is paused, but if we go back, we should see it gently push in the direction of the Y axis in the green arrow. But only from areas that are covered by the white parts of this noise shape. So not all of it would be pushed. And it gives us like the look of some air currents here. If we were to pump that up quite high, let's say a constant mask of 100, and like it will basically push the entire thing off. But let's see what it looks like. I wonder if it would give us a really good sort of cirrus streak. Here we go, look. Hey, that's nice. Here we go, look. So you could use this to build up some clouds that have got that streaky quality. But I'll be using this in quite a subtle way. So let's bring that down. We'll keep that as 1, but we'll use our constant mask as a throttle. We'll bring it down to just say 10, something like that. And we're going to build a couple of these. So let's Control C, Control V. Of course, one noise 2, and then we're gonna change the scale. Let's say 3. Let's also whack a different seed in here and pop this in. So both of these noises are driving where this noise, this deformation of the cloud happens, and we are randomizing where that appears. So we should get an even more mixed result now. Let's try this out. All right, I like that, but no one ever said that these guys have to go in the same direction. So let's 0 out Y and put 1 in X and see how this looks. So different parts of the cloud are being grabbed and pushed in a direction. You know, we don't really have much art directable control over which part. You know, if we wanted to do that, we'd have to go in there and manually drop in a line force or some vorticals or something. But you know, for a storm front or something, this would look quite cool, especially, you know, looking down from a space station or something. Let's get rid of the ground, enable the skybox, and then we're gonna go into our simulation. Let's up the detail a bit. All right, that's looking pretty cool. What I might do though is I might drop the throttle somewhat on these, because they are having an effect. They're kind of having too much of an effect for me. I also might mess around with the bias. So again, where this is going to be activated where it's white, and where it's black it's going to be ignored. So let's make the white area smaller. Let's bring him down this way, something like this, because we want little patches of activity. Let's do the same here. I'm going to drop the resolution again. Now you might find that, you know, you don't want this really thin layer of smoke here, and that can be controlled pretty easily. If we go into our shading, right now we've got, where is it, smoke? We've got our smoke density up at 300. If we bring this down, we lose quite a lot of thickness. So that looks like quite a nice level, but you might say to yourself, all right, I don't want all of these really thin wispy bits. That's what the smoke density minimum limit is for. So if we bring this up even a tiny bit, maybe 1 or 2 or something like that, we'll be left with the thicker parts of this, but EmberGen will not display and therefore not render the thinner parts. So let's say 2, see what that looks like. There you go, look. So it is simulating it, it's just not showing it, it's not displaying it. Let's build a little bit more detail into this thing as well. And let's play with the lighting. Right now we're lit from above. Let's make something slightly more dramatic. Let's get rid of the ambient. Change our elevation to something like 5. You see that we've got some height to these clouds. And let's go back into our shading and let's make them thicker again, because we can get some shadows on them then. So you can use both of these sliders in conjunction with each other, and you can get these nice wispy bits down here. All right, and then maybe we can mess with our lighting in the shading node. Love the look of all these ripples showing up here. Any of this blockiness that you see, it all gets resolved because, you know, after it stops building, it just gets pushed around by these forces. And I'm all about these streaks here, they're great. We can still add a bit more detail. I just want to see what this one looks like once it's built. Yeah, this is what we like. It's looking good. You know, if you were rendering this straight out of EmberGen, you've got loads and loads of different sliders to play with that would dictate, you know, how thick this cloud is, you know, how much light it's letting through, how much shadowing there is in between all the individual parts, how the light affects it. So let's add just a little bit more detail in, a little bit of vorticity. So we're going to drop that down. We're going to bring our constant mask up to, see what it looks like with 50. And then 15 for our vorticity, and that's just like a global noise you can think of. And you've got obviously the various throttles for letting that through. But you know, sometimes because it's global, it can be a little bit heavy-handed, so you got to, you know, bring it in really gently. You can already see that we've got a lot more of activity going on here. And there is a point where it becomes obvious noise. So I would say, yeah, definitely too much. I've got an idea. Why don't we include this as part of our build? So we've got our volume creation here, and then we've got this period here. We could say, start from this keyframe with a high value for vorticity, and then bring it down as we get to this point, and that's where our build is finished. So let's enable keyframes. Let's bring it up to something like, kick it off with 50. Get to about here, and we're at 0. And we're going to line these guys up. Right click, align right. And then these guys here, align left. So these things all happen at the same time. And let's just see what that looks like. So you can see that, earlier in the simulation it was broken up by the vorticity, but then it kind of stopped. And at that point it got stretched by the noise forces, which is pretty neat. I would still probably bring it down a little. So instead of starting at 50, let's try 20 and just see if that helps. Maybe even do the same with the large vorticity. So let's enable keyframes there. So let's go down to 0 there. Line them all up, right click, align right. And these guys align left. And what I might also do is for these guys here, set them to 0. Because otherwise throughout the entire build process they're pumping this vorticity, and I just want it to sort of appear, make things turbulent, and then gently fade out again. And let's see how that goes. This arc as well, by the way, let's just show you that again. So we've got our shading, smoke, that's being cut out by this smoke density limit. So bring that back down to 0. You can produce these arcs because of our advection that's being swung around by, where is it? Our oscillator. There we go. See these arcs. And you tend to get that in cirrus clouds as well. I'll obviously put up a couple of pictures, and that's where currents change up in the air and things stop going in one direction and start to gently move around to another direction. We've built that in with this oscillator, and it's saying we're moving in the X direction forwards and backwards, and we're moving also in the Y direction, but at different rates and at different times. So what's happening there is it's just one direction is gently being overridden by another, and that's how we get this sort of swaying. And that can really help to build those thin and wispy parts. All right, we should start to get our vorticity now. So that comes in, you can see it all coming in here. And then it should start to ramp back down again. I think it's down to personal taste as well. Like I don't quite like how much it breaks up the edges. Well, it doesn't seem too bad because by the time you get to the end of the build process, it's kind of faded. So that doesn't seem too bad. So from the underneath, we've got this. And yeah, look, these are some nice shapes that we're getting. And the light is interacting really nicely with them over here. And obviously because we've got a directional light, we can mess around with this. So we've got our elevation here. Some spooky nighttime clouds. That's pretty cool. Let's change, like a nice sort of sunsetish colour. Look at that. Lovely. Okay. So that has been how to make a cloud machine in EmberGen. It's actually pretty easy. What did we use? We used a bit of randomization, a couple of different noises, a collider, an oscillator. That was the secret sauce, really. So just to go over it really quickly, I'm going to drop our domain back down to 512, 512, just to keep it performing nicely. So we have a primitive inside of a domain. The domain is flat, it's not very high at all, it's just wide and long and has enough room to contain a few flat clouds. We got a collider, and that collider is being driven by this noise. All right, this noise which we can't really see until we turn the collider on. That's this stuff here. Our particle emitter is driven by this primitive here, and it's birthing particles which are giving off smoke. But this collider is stopping some of them inside of this boundary from ever appearing. So what we end up with is like a cutout. So that's where the shape of our clouds comes from. Now when we make these noises, we enable randomization for scale and seed, so that every time we hit randomized, we can get a whole new scene, but under those same rules. We've got shaping noise, which is like a larger scale noise. That's set at 150. You can see that's quite big here. Right, it's got some animation to it, and that's given us like the primary wind current that's moving these clumps of cloud around. And that's kind of what's creating these streaks as well. Now, if you pump this up to something really high, you'd actually see exactly what it's doing, but we'd have to go right back to the beginning. Once that advection stops about here, you'll see that the noise takes over and starts to push all of these clouds around. There you go. So all of that movement is being created by this shaping noise node here. And we kept that fairly low. It was down at 1, I believe. And there's 2 further noises, and these guys are actually quite low, I think. They're a scale of 1, all right? An amplitude of 0.2, yeah. And what we've got is some mask shapes going in. So it is not just global, it's not all over the place. And we use these with a bias so that we've got less white than we have black. So we've got patches of movement being driven by this noise. And if we enable seed randomization for both of these, and likewise we didn't in this case, but you could enable it here as well, then every time we randomize, that gets randomized as well. Now the main thing that creates this is the oscillator, and that is driving under our, I believe it's simulation. Here we go, advection offset. So advection offset, think of that as a global non-noisy wind. So it's just a linear direction that things get pushed in. All right, we've created a pinout for this, and we've brought it into this mod, this oscillator node. And what we've told it to do is to push originally just in one direction, the X direction, by 15 meters a second, in either direction. And we've used a couple of controls down here to decide how quickly, how fast we want that to happen. And ultimately we've keyframed that to be quite strong, to go down to a much less severe movement. So to begin with, it's quite a strong movement, and that's what these streaks are. And as we get somewhere down here to these guys, it then tapers right out. So quite a violent movement that becomes a really subtle movement. And then we also introduced a bit more randomness by allowing the Y direction to move as well, but in a different amount at a different rate as well. So that's how we get this this sort of arc shape. You'll see that you start to get some bends going on here. Here we go. That's how we got that. So once that's done its work, our collider turns off. And at that point, the noise takes over and starts to push and smudge these clouds around. And we let the other 2 noise nodes build the like the fine noise in, and we've also got on the simulation node some vorticity that starts to happen as well. So there's just a few things that have been keyframed there. I'll make this preset available, obviously, for you to download and play around with. It would be really great to see what people can make with it. If you were to do a similar thing, how would you build it? What techniques would you use? Maybe you could use different shapes as an emitter. Maybe you could do it without using a particle emitter at all. Or maybe without a collider. Maybe you could do it with just the mask shapes on the particle emitter. I went with the collider because it gives you like a really severe piece of sky where there's no cloud. So yeah, download it, have a mess around with it, see what you can make. I'd love to see your results. If you get stuck, jump into Discord, just shout one of us and we'll come down and we'll help. See you in the next video.